Welcome guys, we've had the Hungarian Grand Prix and it's that time where I go through and rate each and every one of the drivers on how they got on over the whole weekend, and as ever we always start with the race winner, Lando Norris. Pulled off a surprise victory when you look at what happened to him going down into turn 1, coming up P5. A lot of talk going on about, is there secretly sort of some strategy at play in the background where we're seeing more strategy wars between Lando's side of the garage compared to Oscar's side of the garage. I mean, he got the call for the one stop and when he got that call, he was very clear cut on, yes, let's do this, whereas Oscar was a bit and ahhing. But actually, when you look at it, it was because they were in two completely different races, the two McLaren guys. Oscar was rightly so probably considering Leclerc in the background, although over his team radio was very clear that he just wanted to beat Lando Norris. I think they were also probably looking at the Ferraris. I don't think they quite expected to see Charles Leclerc go off track as bad as he did. And Norris was clear. He made his decision and it was purely down to that awful start, put him in P5. And had he not been stuck behind George Russell for as long as he did and he made his way past it, I'm not so sure he would have gone for the strategy call that he did. So a lot of if, buts, maybes and circumstances played a bigger role in that decision for him to go one stop, but it absolutely paid off, and boy did he execute that absolutely brilliantly. His laps straight out were really quick, and I thought he's probably going too fast and might really struggle towards the end, and 15 laps older tyres to Oscar Piastri, but he managed to hold on and made that gap to that 6-7 tenths down that straight to make it count and keep that first place position. But I think that stint was absolutely tremendous. For me, it was absolutely champion-esque, like world champion-esque. It was what we've seen greats before do. And for me, I thought it was absolutely brilliant the way he managed tyres. We know this McLaren is good on his tyres, but 15 laps older tyres. I thought Oscar would be right up behind him and passed in a number of laps. I didn't think he needed 4 laps personally when he looked at the tyre deficit, but clearly he did, and more so I think actually Norris drove absolutely brilliantly well, and I've been probably one of the first to criticise Norris more so than others, been called out for it before in comments if you look in previous videos, that probably a little bit too harsh on Norris, but hats off to him. I thought he drove absolutely brilliantly, and there's nothing I can do but give him a 10 out of 10, because for me personally I thought he drove fantastically well. Second place man, Oscar Piastri, and well, I think he had a lot of questions, didn't he, for his team and even for himself potentially, of how he's lost this race once he got past Charles Leclerc, and how he just couldn't get close enough to Norris to make that dive bomb work in a manner that was efficient. He risked everything on the line, and for him he got almost a perfect start in a way. It wasn't a great start, but it meant Norris was penned in behind him and he dropped two or three places. Norris back down to P5, and he had the disappointing probably thing was he just couldn't pass Leclerc early doors, but for him in his race, he had enough in his pocket. Once he did that overcut on Charles Leclerc, he was 6 laps later than Leclerc to get and pass him. I don't think he expected, or anybody expected, to Leclerc to just suddenly drop 2 seconds off the pace, considering how fast he was at the early parts of the race. So I think that was a big surprise and completely threw him and his strategy team off track. But for that, I think, and so what is surprising actually here, I think this is, we got to give Oscar credit. All along he was saying, forget about Charles Leclerc, I just want to beat Lando Norris, because he knows that's his championship. So I was a little bit surprised that when they did call him in when they did, because you could see once Leclerc was on them tyres, he was massively slow. So why didn't they divert the strategy then? Is it was because he'd pitted so early in the first stint that he couldn't have made it through to the end on the end on that second set of tyres, and he was almost stuck to it to give himself a chance and a shot to try and catch Lando Norris. Probably more likely that than anything else, but he should have really won this race. He put himself in a good position. He was ahead of him in qualifying. He was ahead of him pretty much for most of that race, and somehow he's come out in second place and lost some points in the championship. A big swing really, where we'd gone away what would have been 16, 20 odd, 23 points, nearly a whole Grand Prix race victory ahead of Lando Norris, and it would have meant Norris would have had to go on a massive run of winning at least 4 or 5 out of the next 10 races. So pressure would have been back on Norris's side of the garage, and now it's championship really is back on. He's got a 9-point lead over Norris still, so you can be fairly comfortable with that, but it shouldn't have been gone the way he personally I think would have felt it had gone. It's a difficult one to rate his race, because I think he did absolutely everything right pretty much all weekend, so I'm giving him a 9 out of 10. Third place man George Russell finished a surprise podium for him in the end. Started 4th, a great start, probably the perfect start for him. Like I said, cheekily and really well done to him to having that foresight to see that Norris is penned in, let's block him in a little bit and get Fernando Alonso ahead of him. Also, that worked really well, but for the fact that Fernando could only keep Lando Norris behind for a lap at best, and then actually Russell did a pretty good job of keeping Lando Norris behind him for as long as he did. I think luckily as well, when you look at the way the second timing of Russell's second pit stop, and Norris was losing time. He lost about a second behind Russell, but luckily for Norris, it was only 1 lap, and then his lead from Oscar to Norris was down by a second. So had he been blocked maybe another lap or 2, we might have seen a different race winner. So that kind of got missed a little bit that in comms and when during watching the race, but that was crucial that Russell pitted for Norris when he did. But for Russell, he was keeping Lando Norris behind comfortably. Should he have pitted? Could he have tried the one stop like Lando Norris did? Again, I think he pitted fairly early, lap 19, onto them hard, so I think it was far too much to ask potentially, especially in his car where they aren't so good on the hard tyres or on their tyres compared to the McLarens. But from there on, when he put them second set on, he was absolutely flying, brilliant qualifying laps, and had enough pace to go and catch and beat Charles Leclerc. He got a couple of stabs on it, was a bit close when they came to, into racing combat, felt unfairly done so with the sort of late brake moving under the braking for Leclerc. Leclerc got the penalty for that. But for Russell, I think P3 and a podium was way more better than they could have hoped for. The cooler conditions clearly helped their car, because even when it comes to qualifying, it was surprising to see how close they were to the front, and they've not really seen that up until the qualifying session, to be honest with you. And then even in the race, their pace was pretty strong, but I think Russell sort of said I can't really look too much into that. It's the cooler conditions clearly massively helped. Track temperature on the day was about 6 degrees cooler than it was in qualifying, so everybody knows when the cooler conditions are out, the Mercs are in the game. But Russell with a P3, I thought he absolutely more than maximised everything he could out of that car on the day, and pretty solid weekend from him. I think I've given 9 out of 10. Fourth place man Charles Leclerc. Was a race of what could have been and should have been for him. A brilliant qualifying session, put that car in P1, perfect start as well, down into turn 1, no trouble really, and his pace was really surprising, pulling away from Oscar Piastri and got the gap up to about 3 seconds, so much so that even Oscar went for the undercut at that first stop on Leclerc, and Leclerc had just his shoulder over, nothing really to worry about, pit 1 lap later and came out comfortably ahead of Oscar Piastri. And at that stage I thought, Ferrari have got this one in the bag, but it's only after that second stop where this issue potentially of of the chassis apparently came to bed or came to rise, and he was then 2 seconds a lap slower. I've watched the point on Alex Brundle makes that he thinks really when you look at that car, especially at the early starts of the race, they were really low. Leclerc scrubbing the ground, and it probably was back due to that plank wear issue that we've seen with Ferrari have when they are quick. It's too low and they get the plank wear, and were potentially going to be found to be illegal. He thinks that possibly they may have increased the tyre pressure on the hards, but as soon as you do that, the car and grip absolutely disappear. And I think that's why Leclerc was over radio saying, if we were going to think of a way to manage this plank wear, that was not the way to do it. You should have told me earlier, and there was a way to sort of manage that. But I think the Ferrari team really couldn't really say that over the radio, that we think, or alert the authorities that, we might be at risk of plank wear, because, the plank wear checking is done at random. But if you've got someone over the radio saying we might be low on plank wear, you can bet the stewards are going to pick that car to check the plank wear at the end. So I think that's why as soon as Leclerc got out of the car, it was all sort of hush hush, let's pretend that never happened, or that radio message from Charles Leclerc never happened. And he said it was a very different issue with the chassis than what he thought over the radio apparently, and they were screaming about, and it's all got buried completely, what that issue was with that Ferrari. The plank wear issue kind of does make a lot of sense, but I mean, clearly it could be completely something different to that. For rating, it's a hard one, because when you finished fourth after being first in the race on pole position, it's a difficult one to take. But I thought that that was absolutely outstanding, and his first stint was absolutely brilliant. And but for this car issue, whatever this may be, he would have at least finished on the podium first, second, who knows. But for me, I've got to give him an 8 out of 10, because I thought he drove pretty well all race weekend. Fifth place man, Fernando Alonso, and well, the evergreen Fernando Alonso in the racing green of Aston Martin pulls off an absolutely tremendous drive. To think he wasn't in that car in FP1 due to a back issue, comes into qualifying a brilliant P5 in qualifying, and the race, the master himself pulled it off, a great one stop. Just managed his own race, didn't really worry about getting into too many fights. Probably why I didn't worry about holding Norris up too much, because he knew that wasn't his race really. Went for a super long stint, pit on lap 40 for his hards, and then managed to get out ahead of Lewis Hamilton into that P6 position when he came out. Absolutely brilliant drive from him. We've seen him do this before, but the car surprisingly just looked amazing in Hungary, where they were absolutely nowhere 1 week before in Belgium. So is this again just really track specific performance? And when they can do this, Fernando Alonso more often than not really does deliver, and boy has he delivered for this team. Again, an absolutely brilliant result for me. Really look forward and hope he can keep this up, and really good to see him back at the front. What a driver this guy is. We've got Lewis Hamilton at the other end sort of complaining about I've not got it, I'm useless, and this guy is just pumping in performance after performance. As soon as he's given that car, this boy delivers, and absolutely brilliant job from him. A 10 out of 10 for me. Sixth place man, Gabi Bortoleto, and this guy absolutely pulled it off. A 7th place in qualifying, a really good qualifying. We've seen him do that before but fall off in the race, but he absolutely made it count this weekend here in Hungary. A great drive, finished in P6, 4 seconds behind Fernando Alonso. Managed to beat here Lance Stroll into that position, who qualified ahead of him. I think he was helped a little bit though, because Lance Stroll, after he pit, was stuck behind Bortoleto's teammate Nico Hülkenberg, and I think that just slowed him down and meant Bortoleto comfortably got out ahead of Lance Stroll, with that 1 lap extra advantage on the tyres as well. And then really just, where it was difficult to overtake, he drove fantastically well, got, really close to his manager Fernando Alonso, an absolutely brilliant drive, and really good to see this rookie that has actually really impressed as the season's gone on. He's had much better performances as the car's improved, and we kind of see what he can really do, where he's now got a half decent car, and he pulled off, for me, an absolutely tremendous result. I've given him a 10 out of 10. 7th place man, Lance Stroll, and him another one I can be really happy with this weekend. A brilliant qualifying to qualifying P6 right behind his teammate, just over a 10th of pole position, and I think the disappointing really is that he finished in 7th place and not right behind his teammate in the end. Like I said, with Bortoleto, I think he got held up by his teammate Nico Hülkenberg when he was on the fresh tyres to really try and help with that undercut. But we've seen here this race weekend, the undercut wasn't anywhere near as strong as it was last season at the Hungaroring. So I think, a different way the race ran in the end. But I thought a really, really tremendous job. Brought home really much needed points for this team. Gets them right up in there with the fight with Aston Martin, Sauber, and they're now just 20 points off Williams. So the second half, or the last 10 races of the season, should be really, really good, because the constructors fight now is looking like anyone's game. If we've got Aston Martin can pull off surprise performances like this and pick up big points, if we've seen Sauber do that now a couple of times. Williams seems to have dropped off a little bit. Alpine have some really good races and have shockers like they have here. And same with the Haas. It's so wavy in what's going on and who's performing weekend to weekend between these midfield guys that anybody can finish in the top 5, which is absolutely brilliant to see. But back to Stroll, I think he is much needed points for the team, and a really, really good weekend from him. I've given him an 8 out of 10. 8th place man, Liam Lawson, and he drove really, really well. Qualified in 9th, beat his teammate who was qualified right behind him. Early doors, he got passed by Max Verstappen, and it did look like is that another sort of team orders game played here, but clearly not. I think Max just took him by surprise. But when Max came back behind him, you can tell the championship position, Red Bull don't really think Max is going to get this one. There was no call sort of really to say, come on Liam, let Max through. He's got a championship to think about, because the way Liam Lawson defended from Max Verstappen was absolutely brilliant. Defended so hard. First time we've kind of really see that between the two Red Bull outfits. And well done to Liam Lawson. Held off charging Max Verstappen, which isn't the easiest to do, and he'll be really, really positive heading into the break after the start of the season that he's had. To finish and go on a break in the form that he has, he'll be absolutely happy with that. He can go refresh and start again, because this boy does kind of need that break, doesn't he? But to finish it on a high, he'll be absolutely massively happy with that. I thought it was a really, really strong performance. Beats his teammate again in qualifying, and picks up some really good points for him and the team. So I've given him a 9 out of 10. 9th place man, Max Verstappen, and it's, well, I can't remember the last time I've said that. Qualified in 8th place, and he got a bad start, put himself behind Liam Lawson, and then got a great move on Lawson and also Lance Stroll, and then you thought this is the Max Verstappen that we kind of expected in the races to then, just charge up and pass people for fun, but it got stuck in the DRS train, and then he went for the second stop, and then really struggled to get past Liam Lawson. The car, he was just saying, just had no grip anywhere. He got away with the incident with Lewis Hamilton, no penalty for that. I think rightly so, because it was just Lewis went off track, they didn't touch. How do you give someone a penalty for having to go? Did he really force Lewis off track? I'm not too sure. So yeah, I think probably for me the right decision made there. He didn't really charge in. He had enough and close enough to Lewis to have the sniff that he did. But really a difficult weekend for him and Red Bull. They'll be hoping that they can get it back together for his home race next time out, but a difficult weekend for Red Bull and Max Verstappen. We don't see this happen too often. A 6 out of 10 for me. 7th place man, Kimi Antonelli, and after a horrible qualifying session in P15, the race actually came really good for him in the end. Got himself up to P10 and the one stop, managed to hold out really well at the end on aging tyres. He's had a really bad run. The qualifying was a bad session, but so is his race has gone that way when he's qualified badly as well. He was really happy to get back in the points, his first points of the European season. But yeah, he really didn't help himself and made his life difficult with a poor qualifying session. He'll be hoping he can just kick on. He felt more comfortable in the car now. They've gone back to the other suspension settings than what they changed to. So more learning to do. He felt more comfortable. So hopefully that might see him go back to the performances we've seen from him earlier in the season, where he was probably one of the star rookies, really, alongside Isaac Hadjar. We were talking about an awful lot. Really good performances. Dropped off since then, but hopefully we can see the Kimi that we've seen early doors rise again. But yeah, because of the poor qualifying session, the car was actually good around here. We've got his teammate up on the podium. I've given him a 7 out of 10. 11th place man, Isaac Hadjar, started in the top 10. They'd be disappointed if he just finished out the points in the end in P11. Yeah, pretty much there most of the race in the DRS train. No points for him. This is 5 races now where we've not seen him pick up points, so he's going a little bit like the guy before Kimi Antonelli, where we've been talking him up all season. He's gone on a bit of a dip. He said he was really unlucky in this race. He was really lucky last time out in Spa as well. But yeah, unlucky doesn't get you points, unfortunately, and not really, but he looks at, yeah, he was unlucky when you look at the season back, generally speaking. But he'll be hoping that he can go and pick up some points as well. He'll be disappointed. He was really disappointed with his weekend. His teammates beating him and picked up some points, and he's missed out on points by 1 position. But yeah, difficult weekend. I've given him a 6 out of 10. 12th place man, Mr. Useless, Lewis Hamilton. I mean, yeah, I've not seen him downbeat this much ever, really. He got stuck behind slower cars on his hards early doors. You know, they just weren't pitting up ahead of him, and that really didn't help him at all with his strategy. And then when he was on the mediums, made up 2 or 3 quick places, but then, yeah, got stuck in the DRS train again. You know, punted off by Max Verstappen, and that put him, was P11, or he was P8 at that time, down to P11. So potentially there might have been some points of playing how that might have panned out had that not happened. But yeah, really, really difficult weekend for him. He just said he needs to be replaced. Will we see him back at the end of this, you know, summer break? He said he still loves racing. You'll see him in Zandvoort, so don't worry, Lewis fans. But yeah, really strange to see him so so downcast. He said there's other issues going on outside of the car, whether that's with the team or personal issues that are affecting him in his mood at the moment. But hopefully he can refresh, regroup, and come back stronger in Zandvoort and see the Lewis Hamilton that we kind of all know and love. But for this weekend, a really difficult one. I've given him a 4 out of 10. 13th place man, Nico Hülkenberg, qualified in 18th, and another really, really bad race for him, really down to his qualifying, because in the race, actually, he's shown what performance and really what should have come out of this car. He pit early, went for a massive undercut, and it worked really well because he had the pace of the top 4 where everybody else was stuck in traffic. But as he made up all the time of his pits, and everyone was coming to pit, that's really what made him up that 5 places. Could have done more had some of them not gone on as long as they did on their first stints and moved to the 1 stop. So more points potentially would have been on cards had more of people gone on to the 2 stops. Yeah, and then he got the 5-second penalty, which really didn't help him at all for the jump start, which looked really minor. He barely moved and seemed to have stopped before the lights went out, but he must have passed the line, which you couldn't really see from the camera angle that I've seen. But yeah, really, the qualifying made his race so hard that yeah, anything from here was going to be really difficult, and I've given him a 5 out of 10 purely because that bad qualifying has really made what should have been a decent race and decent points where the car has gone well possible. Yeah, disappointing. 6 out of 10, Nico Hülkenberg. 14th place man, Carlos Sainz, a decent qualifying session in P13, and then made him well back up into P14 in the end. He would have been P13, I think, but for the incident with Pierre Gasly where he just got rammed off track. Not really much he could do there. That cost him, but yeah, it was a really struggle in the car. He said the best he could have really hoped for was where he qualified. But yeah, the car just didn't feel like it was good enough to fight for the points. A really difficult weekend for the Williams boys, probably as I predicted. Hard to judge Carlos Sainz when the car is that difficult, but yeah, disappointing overall. I've given him a 5 out of 10. 15th place man, his teammate Alex Albon, and he put himself in a really bad position. 19th place in qualifying. Yes, the car is bad, but probably not that bad. The really poor qualifying just didn't really help him in the race. He managed to make up some places, finished right behind his teammate in the end, but that poor qualifying just means a slightly harsher grade than we've seen of Carlos Sainz. Have given him a 4 out of 10. 16th place, Esteban Ocon, and yeah, this car looked pretty decent actually. Might have nicked a point, especially when we've seen what Ollie Behrman would have done, but Ocon again with a really difficult qualifying session, beaten by his more inexperienced teammate. He qualified in 17th, which made his race ultimately difficult. Finished 16th in the end, was P13 at one point, had about 16-second gap to catch Lewis Hamilton, but he pitted really early, was on really old tyres, tried to keep Gasly behind, wasn't possible, and then just dropped back really from there in what's a disappointing and difficult weekend for the Haas team. I thought they'd go well here. Ocon generally does go well around here, he's won here before, so yeah, a really disappointing weekend from Ocon. I've given him a 4 out of 10. 17th place man, Yuki Tsunoda, qualified in 16th, and probably one of the most disappointing qualifying sessions considering how close he was to Max Verstappen and to still go out in Q1. Started from the pit lane, of course, because of a power unit change. We've seen him do that again, the second race in a row. Is that just really where they've got a good engine and think, let's protect it, we're well out of position, really not going to do anything from here, and let's keep the good engine for potentially where we qualify better. He said he got damage in the race. He wasn't really sure where he got that from. Lost a lot of pace with that. He just really needs to score some points, doesn't he, Yuki Tsunoda? We've seen him much closer to Max Verstappen since he's got this new chassis, so he was obviously hanging on to the positives of that. But other than that, when he just really needs to put, some points. It's good to see him closer to Max Verstappen. The gap was just over a tenth, was it? So barely anything in it between his pace, but to go out in Q1 despite that shows how competitive qualifying is. I mean, it's where the fun has been a lot of race weekends, hasn't it, at the moment, where qualifying is absolutely fantastic. The Q1s, we've seen anybody go out and we've seen big names go out, so it's not really a surprise anymore, so you really have to perform in that Q1 session, and Yuki quite hasn't got that right, although he wasn't far off here this weekend, and that really made his race difficult, obviously with the damage as well. But positive that he's getting closer to Max Verstappen, but still not great. I've given him a 4 out of 10. 18th place man, Franco Colapinto, and his race went all wrong right at the start. A brilliant qualifying session actually to put himself in P14, and he finally shown some of that raw pace we know he's got. He beat his more experienced teammate in Gasly in qualifying, but yeah, put it in the bin. Lost 4 places on the turn 1. Again, he said he got some issues with the car after that, and he was just slow and had no grip. Had 2 really slow stops as well, 6-7 seconds, which really didn't help his race. Finished and ran pre-18 for most of it from there onwards, and hard to rate because he had a really good qualifying and promising. Like to see the Franco Colapinto that kind of know back, especially with the raw pace and qualifying, but it just hasn't come back for him in the race. Will we see him in Zandvoort? Who knows, because of this contract, 5-race contract has been up, and we've had no word of how Alpine are going to play it, so we may not see him in Zandvoort. Who knows? But I would kind of like to see him and just build on some of the positives. Or could we see a new face altogether? Who knows with this Alpine outfit and Flavio running the show there? Anything can happen, but for Franco, I've given him a 4 out of 10. 19th place, Franco Colapinto's teammate Pierre Gasly, and like his teammate, got a bad start. He qualified in 16th, lost 3 places at the start like his teammate, and then his race didn't get any better from there really. He was running pretty lowly, and then got that 10-second penalty for the collision with Carlos Sainz, which put him behind his teammate in the end. Yeah, difficult one for him. He's generally gone really well where the car's been difficult. A brilliant point, like we said in Spa last time out. So yeah, difficult to see him do that. Yeah, the mistake with Carlos Sainz was really poor. Well-deserved penalty on there. Just kind of ran him wide and whacked into him. There's defending hard and there's just forcing a guy off track. Is effectively what I did there. Yeah, no, can't argue with that. I've given him a 3 out of 10 because I think it should be slightly more poorer result than Franco Colapinto got, because Frank outqualified him and it was a bad qualifying and race for Gasly. Onto the DNFs, just the one. Ollie Behrman qualified in 11th place, and then he was running in the points and looked like potential there for a point, but then he got some damage on his car. Not sure if that was as a result of running wide, because he said that's kind of when the issues seemed to occur, but to run wide and lose the amount of downforce and have the amount of issues that he had, seemed like there was probably something a little bit more to it than just that, especially to disqualify or to not finish and retire because of that. Normally we see something more significant at play and less likely to happen from just running wide, but these cars, anything can happen, who knows. But yeah, lap 49 DNF for him. I've given him a 5 out of 10 because I thought his qualifying was decent. He ran decent in the race, and I'm putting his DNF down to car issues rather than a mistake and something that he caused. Let's get to the predictions review, and well, I've got the top 3 for qualifying as the right top 3, but not in the order that I predicted. I had Oscar Piastri to take pole position, Norris second, and Charles Leclerc third. I was buzzing that I've got the top 3 drivers right, but I'd never expected it to be in the order that it did. Leclerc nicking a surprise pole position, and then it was Piastri in second and Norris third. For the race, I expected it to finish as it started. Piastri to take the win, Norris second, and Leclerc in third, but it was Lando Norris with a brilliant win and that one-stop strategy working to get him ahead of his teammate Oscar Piastri, who finished in second. And it was a surprise George Russell podium in the end, because had Ferrari managed to keep their pace that we'd seen at the early parts of the race, it didn't look like there was anyone in for a shout for that P3 in the end, because them 3 effectively dominated every practice session as the top 3 qualifying, and it should have really gone that way in the race. I predicted it to be a good weekend for the Haas. Absolutely not. A DNF and a P16. Yeah, difficult weekend for Haas. So definitely not a good one like I predicted. I thought it'd be a bad weekend for the Williams and a P15 and 14. I'll take that, and I think that's probably the only one correct result that I got despite the qualifying top 3. I'm going to take some positives on that, because yeah, to get them in the top 3 I thought was good. I don't think anyone would have got Leclerc to take pole position. And yeah, there we have it, the final race driver ratings video before this summer break. We head back now to Zandvoort. Looking forward to that. Can Max be back? He's grown king of Zandvoort ever since we've been there. Doesn't look likely though which of the 2 McLaren drivers will come back strongest and stake their claim in a final 10 race shootout for the championship. It's looking close, looking tight, and it should be absolutely brilliant. I can't wait for the next 10 races to get going. Watch out for the mid-season driver ratings and how everybody's got on, and yeah, I'll average all the scores that I've done so far mid-season, and watch out for my Uber to F1 esports mission. It continues. The sim rig right there. I'll be giving it another go at Hungary to see if I can get closer to the guys that pulled off the lap times on the grid. Watch out for the video on that. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment. As always, see you on the next one.